American money empire, building a financial empire.
Imagine 1939, Detroit, the city that was supposed to be the beating heart of industrial America, is in its death throes. Morning, a cold wind off Lake Erie blows old newspapers down empty streets. Bread lines for free soup from the Salvation Army stretch for blocks. Men in worn-out shoes, eyes hollow, stand silently. They haven't worked in years. Someone coughs into their fist. Another hides their face in their collar. The air hangs heavy with dust, coal smoke, and hopeless despair. Down the line, the whispers are bitter and quiet. They say farmers in Chicago are burning surplus grain just to keep prices up while we starve. Capitalism feels dead. The American dream seems like a cruel joke to millions who lost everything. Now, fast forward just 6 short, blood-soaked years to 1945. The same Detroit, but unrecognizable. Night turns to day under the roar of hammers and the whine of machines. Those same men who lined up for soup now walk out of factories with fat pay envelopes. They're confidently signing mortgages for their own homes in brand new suburbs, the Levittowns of tomorrow. Their wives greet the kids with fresh milk in glass bottles, and factory parking lots are a shimmering sea of chrome bumpers on new Chevys and Fords. How did a country rotting from the inside out turn itself, in one 5-year span, into the richest and most powerful empire in human history? The answer is brutally simple. America was saved by the deadliest war ever fought. Today, we're dissecting this dark paradox, how the blood, ash, and ruins of Europe and Asia turned into pure gold in American banks, and how the United States emerged as the world's unchallenged superpower. This isn't just a story of economics. It's about the human cost we're still paying today. To grasp the scale of this transformation, we have to look back at the dark 30s. The 1929 crash hit like an earthquake. Wall Street collapsed. Banks fell like dominoes, and millions watched their life savings vanish overnight. By 1933, unemployment had peaked at a staggering 25%. 1/4 of the American workforce was idle. Across the Midwest, farms in the Dust Bowl were abandoned as families fled toward California, an exodus immortalized in Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. Roosevelt arrived with his New Deal: dams, roads, the CCC planting forests, and the WPA building schools. It was a lifeline, and it worked, to a point. But by 1940, progress stalled. Unemployment was stuck at 15%. The economy was like a massive steam engine bogged down in the mud, pistons pumping, steam billowing, but the wheels spinning uselessly. In bars and kitchens, the whispers grew louder. Roosevelt's just shuffling money from one empty pocket to another. We need real industry, not murals and handouts. Then, war erupted. At first, America clutched its isolationism, desperate to stay out of the fire. But as Britain stood alone and Japan rampaged through Asia, the gears began to shift. The government did the unthinkable. It spent money it didn't have. Deficits soared. This was Keynesian economics on steroids. An experiment so bold even John Maynard Keynes would have been stunned. Uncle Sam showed up at the gates of shuttered factories with a blank check in hand. War became the external shock that scraped the rust off the nation's heart. Plants dormant since 1929 shuddered back to life. The economy flipped from stagnant consumption to total survival mode, demanding everything from uniform buttons to massive aircraft carriers. Tragically, death and destruction overseas became the most effective sales manager American industry had ever seen. GDP began to climb at a staggering 15% a year, figures that peacetime economists could only dream of. The pivotal moment, March 1941, Roosevelt signs Lend-Lease. Publicly, he uses the garden hose metaphor, neighborly help for a house on fire. But behind closed doors, everyone knew the truth. This was a massive pump funneling the world's gold, resources, and influence toward American shores. American industry underwent an incredible metamorphosis. Factories became true alchemical labs. The Underwood typewriter plant in New York tossed out its blueprints for keys and ribbons, retooling to stamp out M1 carbines around the clock. Detroit's auto giants, Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, converted overnight. Assembly lines that once built family sedans now churned out M4 Sherman tanks by the thousands. Chrysler even built a dedicated tank arsenal in Michigan from the ground up. But the crown jewel was Willow Run. Edsel Ford, Henry's son, built a factory a mile long near Detroit, the largest enclosed complex on the planet. Picture it, an endless conveyor under one roof, where raw piles of aluminum, miles of wiring, and massive engines birthed the B-24 Liberator heavy bomber. At its peak, this industrial beast was rolling a complete bomber off the assembly line every 63 minutes, round the clock. By 1944, America was outproducing the entire Axis powers combined. In a single year of war, the U.S. produced more planes, tanks, and ships than many nations had built in their entire pre-war histories. The arsenal of democracy wasn't just a slogan, it was a terrifying reality of industrial might. But who manned those lines 24/7, while millions of men fought and died on Guadalcanal, in Normandy, and across the Pacific? Factories were flooded with those previously shut out of the industrial dream, women and African Americans. In factory break rooms, the whispers were full of wonder. Have you seen Mary? Yesterday she was stirring jam on a kitchen stove. Today she's welding steel for a destroyer, and she's earning more than her husband ever did. The iconic Rosie the Riveter wasn't just a poster anymore. She was millions of real women. 6 million of them entered the workforce for the first time, clutching their own paychecks. This wasn't just about labor. It was a tectonic shift in the nation's soul. Women proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that they could do it all. At the same time, the Great Migration accelerated. African Americans moved north in massive waves, fleeing the Jim Crow South for factory jobs in Detroit, Chicago, and Oakland. While segregation remained, the desperate need for hands caused the first real cracks to appear in the walls of discrimination. Unemployment didn't just fall, it evaporated, hitting a near impossible 1.2% by 1944. People worked grueling 70-hour weeks, pockets bulged with overtime pay. But here was the twist. There was almost nothing to buy. Civilian production had vanished. No new cars, no new appliances. Meat, sugar, and gasoline were strictly rationed. By the time the guns fell silent in 1945, ordinary Americans were sitting on a mountain of cash, $150 billion in savings and war bonds. It was an astronomical sum, nearly equal to the entire U.S. GDP of 1940. It was a coiled spring of pent-up demand, waiting for a reason to snap. When the GIs returned, that spring unleashed a consumer explosion, the likes of which the world had never seen. The rise of the Levittown suburbs, the baby boom, and the obsession with televisions in gleaming chrome. The golden age of the 1950s was born not in peace, but in the heat of the wartime furnace. Was this a true economic miracle? Absolutely. But this miracle carried the sharp smell of gunpowder and blood. While U.S. GDP rocketed skyward, Europe, Japan, and the Soviet Union smoldered in ruins, with cities reduced to ash, factories shattered, and millions dead or maimed. America emerged from the smoke virtually untouched. Overnight, the United States found itself in control of nearly 50% of the entire planet's industrial output and 2/3 of the world's gold reserves. The war didn't just cure the Depression, it fundamentally re-engineered the world. It birthed the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower would later famously warn against. It transformed the US dollar from a mere currency into global law, backed by the shadow of aircraft carriers and nuclear might. The Bretton Woods system of 1944 locked this dominance into place for the next century. We are still living inside that system today. Its foundation was poured in the concrete of 1942 and bound by the sweat of millions on assembly lines. They were people who truly believed they were forging a victory over fascism, and they were. But at the same time, they were forging America's status as a superpower for generations to come. History isn't just dry dates in a textbook. It's the rhythm of factory horns, the smell of welding in the shop, and the quiet whispers in bread lines. If you want to truly understand why our world looks the way it does today and how it all came to be, you're in the right place. Subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. Next time, we'll explore how the Marshall Plan didn't just rebuild Europe. It bought lasting peace for them and permanent influence for America. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.